G'day guys, ZiggyD here. Grinding Gear Games recently released a development manifesto on the planned changes coming to life and energy shield balance in 3.0. Though more specifically, this manifesto details the massive changes, or nerfs, that will be tested in the 3.0 beta. And just to reiterate on that point in particular, as it's an important one, these are changes planned to be tested in the beta, not the definite changes coming to 3.0. Those who played PoE through the last major expansion betas remember that it was a time of dramatic changes being tested, changed, tested again, and sometimes reverted or changed again before the actual expansion release. With that in mind, we get a look at what ZiggyD is planning to lessen the stranglehold on the build meta the huge power difference between Life and ES has created. First though, why are changes needed? So a bit of a history lesson here, I guess. Over time, the difference in power levels between ES and Life-based builds has become more and more pronounced. In the past, players were building something like 4,000 to 5,000 Life builds, and these days that's grown closer to something like 5,000 to 6,000 Life builds. Over the same period of time, Chaos Innoculation builds in particular were jumping from 7,000 to 10,000 ES to 8,000 to 12,000 ES, and in some cases much more. Sometimes breaking the 20,000 ES mark in extreme cases. And it's not been all that uncommon to see players running around with something like 15,000 energy shield. Now, support for the two playstyles was added in many forms, through defensive layers, additional sources of leech, and for ES builds, things like the rapid recharge mechanics of the Occultist. But where both playstyles were seeing more defensive mechanics to make their health pools more effective, the sheer volume of energy shield was going through the roof. With mechanics like instant leech and uninterruptible energy shield recharge, builds have been able to negate a large portion of the game's threats in a very dramatic way. Face-tanking Shaper and other bosses through the powerful combination of an effective ES pool higher than any one-shot skill could break, and leech so strong it allowed near instantaneous refilling of that ES. The end result of this is a strong bias in the player base towards CI these days, even where builds should easily be able to go either way, like your Pathfinder Rangers for example. And then in the words of GGG, players going CI were able to remove almost all the challenge from some of the toughest encounters in the game, and this is obviously not an ideal scenario. To deal with this in 3.0, GGG will be beta testing a four-pronged approach to nerfing ES builds. Now firstly, there will be reductions to the amount of energy shield you can get from items. The 5 to 20% ES Elrian mod for jewelry will be removed, and the values of energy shield on items will see a reduction of up to 33% at the highest levels. Though it's worth noting that this is a top-end nerf, and lower power ES gear, like your leveling ES gear or your early endgame ES gear, will be untouched or maybe even buffed. The intention here is to make it easier to start out as energy shield, but reduce its power at higher levels where the problems lie. An example of this change is given in a before and after format on an ES chest. A 752 ES chest before becomes a 559 ES chest after. Secondly, the bonus percentage more ES scaling behind the Chaos Innoculation node will be removed. It's not clear whether it'll be replaced with a percentage increase node or if it'll be removed altogether. The result of this is quite simply that the bonus ES you get from going CI will be much lower or none at all. Thirdly, the energy shield gained from the Discipline aura will be reduced. It'll grant 33% less energy shield at level 20. This is a nerf that presumably tapers down at the lower levels in line with the changes to items. The Discipline aura, however, will be receiving a 30% increased recharge rate effect, a change that makes sense given the context of the next change. So, the fourth and final change is the heavy reduction of power of leech on ES builds. The Ghost Reaver Keystone is getting a drawback of a reduction in energy shield recharge rate. The result is that you'll need to consider whether it's worth trading recharge out for leech. Now with old Vaal Pact, that would be no questions asked in a lot of cases. But here's the big kahuna of these changes. Vaal Pact will now no longer work with energy shield. Straight up. You'll no longer be able to instantly leech energy shield. I asked Rory if this would also apply to sources of instant leech like the Atziri gloves, and he confirmed that both Atziri's Acuities and Bloodseeker will be getting reworked so that ES won't have any access to instant leech whatsoever. Damn. Now there are some other changes coming that'll affect the Life ES balance as well. A new set of hybrid life defense mods are being added that'll result in a higher potential life values on gear and potentially some more support for hybrid life ES builds. Also, hybrid gear types like Armor ES pieces will now not be able to roll both armor and ES increases, but rather from a pool of hybrid increased mods. The result being that you'll get more overall defenses from these items, but less potential of an individual stat. So hybrid pieces will likely be more strongly biased towards builds wanting to take advantage of both defenses rather than just one of them. Another change is a new set of suffixes like dodge for evasion chests, percentage physical mitigation for armor pieces, and energy shield recharge rate for ES pieces. So, these changes are pretty huge for CI builds. Initial impressions from the community are pretty divisive. Some people hail this as the changes we've needed and that ES builds might finally be balanced. Others think it's another example of ZiggyD overzealously nerfing something and that everyone is going to be playing life builds. Now, under normal circumstances, I'd be inclined towards the latter here, that these changes are too major and that ES is kinda gutted. However, a major expansion beta is not normal circumstances. I do think this is a time to try such radical changes. I think the removal of instant leech from ES builds is 100% the right move, though I personally wonder if it shouldn't also just be happening for life builds too. In my opinion, just kill the Vaal Pact node altogether, especially considering that Rory informed me that they are planning to rework Reflect and are currently considering a few options for doing so. Making Reflect a more interesting mechanic and completely removing instant leech could result in a far more interesting game, with less boss face tanking and more playing smart. For now though, I'm happy to settle for the removal of instant leech from ES builds, which I think will make playing these builds much more interesting and much more in line with the original design of ES as a hit and run life pool. Relying more on leech over time or recharge mechanics could well mean we see CI builds repositioning throughout a fight to give time to refill their ES pools. Far more interesting for the game, I think, than face tanking Shaper with instant leech. The amount of reduced ES, however, I'm a bit less decided on. It definitely needed to be reduced, clearly, but these changes do seem a little heavy-handed. But again, I think the beta is the right time to be doing that. Start heavy-handed with these changes, let people test it on the beta, and soften the nerfs a bit if it's clear that it's needed. I do like where this is going overall. One of the things players often say is that they felt forced to go CI to deal with some of the bullshit mechanics this game sometimes pulls, like volatiles for example, right? Now I do also know that volatile is being reworked as well, which is a fantastic because it's so stupid. And that's the right way for the game to go, I think. Rather than giving more and more defenses to deal with the BS mechanics of the game, which has the side effect of trivializing other challenging encounters, instead remove or rework the BS mechanics and give us less defense. Let the tough fights be tough fights. It's interesting times for PoE. The last major expansion beta, we got what felt like a new game, and it was better in many ways, and I think we're headed that way again. And you know what they say, may you live in interesting times. Though I'm not quite sure if that's often said in kindness or as a curse. Let's see which way things shake out. In the meantime, I'm keen to hear your rants of praise or condemnation for these changes in the comments below. That's it for now, I'm ZiggyD, and thanks for watching.